Why did you move to Mexico?
Well, I think it's for a lot of reasons. Really, Mexico is a very warm country. It's a warm place. And personally, before professionally, I moved there to just kind of get away from things and to kind of take a break from the hustle and bustle. I originally moved to Cancun, Mexico, lived there for several years and did a lot of writing when I was there. And then later, I figured I can't really retire at that age, so I got closer to the United States and moved over to Tijuana, Rosarito Beach area. And so at the end of the day, Mexico is like now it's my home. I've been there over 20 years. And so it's more comfortable for me. It's easier to live there, less stress, things of that sort. And professionally, it's like a filmmaker's paradise. You can go anywhere, you can shoot anywhere. It's got all the different looks, the mountains, the hills, the trees. I mean, the oceans, the deserts, anything you want to shoot there. And I think it's one of the only places that can, at least on the Western Hemisphere, that can be truly cost effective without the rebates.
So you can still have a quote unquote Hollywood career, whatever that looks like, entertainment career, and live and be an expat, basically.
Yeah, one of the things about where we are, which is Tijuana, just below the San Diego border, is that it's, in theory, the closest international point to Hollywood in the world. That means it's drivable. So we can drive everything and everybody down from Los Angeles without putting them on planes, but we're still, working kind of like a fraction of the LA costs. So it's that closest international point. And when we started the program some years ago, many years ago now, but that's what we were thinking about. We're thinking about how can we kind of not have to do LA restraints, LA rules, but still be close enough to drive. I mean, at the end of the day, you can get from Hollywood to the border in about an hour and 45 minutes if traffic is cooperative. I mean, it takes longer than that to get from like the Valley to Newport Beach a lot of the times. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, you can drive everything in and move everybody on land and don't have to put everybody on planes and do all kinds of shipping and things of that sort.
And what about and this might be more of the American media, but that it's dangerous for Americans?
Well, I'll tell you. That is a good question. The biggest hurdle that we have as a film company in Tijuana, Mexico, and in Mexico generally, is what the perception of Mexico is. You have to convince almost everybody that it's safe. Now, it is safe. We've done several films there. I think this will be our 29th coming up without any incidents. And I mean that, no incidents. But, every day you're bombarded with this kind of negative cartels and border problems and all kinds of issues and, immigrants rushing the border. And it makes it feel super dangerous, but it's really not. And it's really difficult to explain that to people or have people believe it. Because they kind of become entrenched in that belief, They kind of like, I have a friend that this happened to, and I did this, and it's very often it's not true. Very often it's just kind of this kind of tsunami of rumors that are being thrown out there because we are there and we know what's there. We understand the lay of the land. So, but it is something we have to make a lot of assurances to actors and people that are coming down. And we have a lot of security around. We don't always need it. Sometimes it's honestly for the optics of it. But we do have plenty of security. And when people get there, they're just like, why? Where's this danger everybody was talking about? It's just really just very, it's very normal, very simple. And just like anywhere else, really. But you do have to take some precautions. You are in a foreign country, and they don't have the civil infrastructure that we have here. So it's not like they have the You can't 2 seconds later, you call the cops and 2 seconds later they're at your door, or 2 minutes later. It's a little bit, you gotta kind of know where you're going and where to go and where not to go. But generally it's super safe.
Any advice for people in terms of if they are scouting locations or they're actually going to shoot, coming with a sense of respect? I'm sure if any American goes to any foreign country, especially these days, maybe the past 20 years, the perception is going to be different. Ways we can conduct ourselves where we give off an air of respecting someone and their homeland?
Absolutely. What we try to do on all the films is make sure that anybody that's interacting with the public is a Mexican person. It's kind of bad optics to have some American running in the street telling this guy to move over there and, hey, close your doors. They talk to each other, so there is a way to do it. And there's kind of like a protocol that we make sure that we have under all our films. And when you go there, especially when you're getting a location, whatever, you have to be very, very polite, and recognize that they probably don't understand it in the same way that maybe LA locations would understand it. They think, oh, well, it's going to be cool. We're going to film something here. They don't know the rush of people that are going to come in there and how they come in and just do all this crazy stuff, and they shut everything down. And so there's protocols in that. You have to make sure that they understand what's going on. You have to make sure that, and we always make sure that the deals are made, all the scouting deals, all the location deals are made with my Mexican staff. We try not to go in there with this kind of American voice, trying to make a bunch of deals. It's always better that way. It goes smoother, and then if there's a problem, they can kind of talk to each other as countrymen and work it out, rather than kind of being the ugly American jumping in there and saying, hey, this needs to be like this and that needs to be like that in some broken Spanish accent. It's better if they do it. And so I always defer. And that's something you learn over time. I mean, our first films, you just have a regular location scout from the Valley going in there and trying to make deals with people who doesn't speak a word of Spanish. And it goes much better the latter way.
How long were you in Mexico before you decided to start a production company?
Well, I was there maybe, let's call it around 7-8 years, as just personally. And I was kind of just writing and trying to figure out where my place would be in the film business. And so it's about between 7 to 10 years, I think I was there. And the genesis of it, just if that skips the question, I don't know, but if the genesis of it is that there was a company in Baja called Baja Films, run by a guy by the name of Delfino Lopez. He was just a regular guy, but they had this film company and they did films on Super 16. Remember Super 16? Remember? And it was, they were doing full 90-minute films for nothing. And I was thinking in terms of, and I look at it, and I was coming from LA, and you're in LA and you're at coffee shops and everybody's trying to figure out a way to get their film together and how we're going to get financed and everything else. And while we're doing that, these guys are doing a film a month, a film every 2 months on film, 90-minute film. Now, you can't get through one of them. I mean, they're not very good. I mean, as far as the way that they're done, narco cinema, it's actually quite famous. And but they were doing these very interesting 90-minute films. And so I just started to think, what if we just added American storyline, maybe 1 or 2 American actors, guy coming down to save his daughter, guy getting down there, gets drunk, gets caught up with the cartels, things like that. And some of the movies that we all know, movies like Man on Fire, movies like Sicario, movies like some of the parts of Traffic. And I thought, I can go and try to figure out a way to fit into that system in Los Angeles, or I can come down there and work with these guys, bring a couple elements down and just keep working. And I decided that that would be the best bet. In other words, it may not be as glamorous in the beginning, but we're getting things done. We're proving our worth. We're creating a reel. We're just staying busy. And you realize how difficult it is for people to stay busy. And you realize also then that a lot of actors will come down and work for you. If they're not doing anything, they'll just come down and say, sure, if they like the script. In Mexico, especially Tijuana and those border areas, it's kind of a really super gritty space. And so it's very interesting to see Americans move through that space. Like I said, mentioned before, movies like Man on Fire, Sicario, things like that, where you have kind of interesting border stories about, and not to mention the cartel tropes that are there. Cartels make very, very good villains, cartel leaders. They're intelligent. They're not, they're organized. They're not just crazy people cutting people up. They're usually very, very good villains. And so there's a lot of stories in there. And so we just decided to stop talking about it and start making the movies.
When did you make your first movie in Mexico?
First movie in Mexico was produced and not directed. Did a film called La Línea, or The Line. I wrote it, produced it. It starred Andy Garcia, Ray Liotta, a whole bunch of people, Isai Morales, Armando Sante. And that was in 2007. We did in 2007, it was released in 2009. Very, very interesting experience. Some of the things that we had an idea to do, we didn't do, meaning we were gonna do it really small, and it wasn't. It was pretty big. We set everything up in LA and took it down to Mexico, and it was quite an experience. It was good, but a very, very, very good experience and a good film, in my opinion.
So you had to prove yourself that you could take this crew down there. You said you were the producer, but not the director, and convince people that it was safe and that this would work.
Yeah, and we were super bubbled on that film. This is before I really started to make Mexican films. The first idea you have a lot of times is you just say, okay, hey, I'm gonna, set things up like anybody else would set it up, and get a DP and get a sound person, and then we're gonna travel down to Tijuana and do this film. So we were like in a bubble, and it was an expensive bubble in comparison to what we could have done it for, but it was a good learning experience. And we had a lot of things now that we know we didn't need, and it was an interesting way to film there, but it's not this kind of organic Mexico filming like our subsequent films were. So, it's kind of like if you go anywhere. You go to Romania, you go to Italy, you crew up in the States usually, you get some local crew there, and then you go and you take your major keys and everybody goes down there and everything else like that. So that was called La Línea, The Line, and it was quite a great experience.
And what were some of the things that you realized later that you didn't need?
We realized later that we did not need, we didn't need to, first of all, we didn't need to create a base camp everywhere we went. We shuttled around this huge 17 truck base camp because we just thought that's what we needed. So everywhere we went, we had to get parking lots and blocking streets and have this big caravan of cars and everything else. That's one of them. And second, and most important, is crew. There's plenty of good crew there, but we, had to take everybody from the States, all the keys, and then the keys said, well, I just don't feel comfortable unless I have my second. And then they said, well, and we have a person that will work, and they're an assistant. And so we didn't quite understand how much all that cost. It just seemed pretty simple. But filming out of the country is very much different than filming in Hollywood or in LA. It's not like you can just give somebody a call time. Hey, call time's in North Hollywood at 7 o'clock and be there. You have to drive them there. They have to have per diem. They've got to have food. They have to have all kinds of coordination of movement, and it's a lot of work. So it's probably double the work to have everybody there to coordinate all the travel and the transportation to set, to and from set, everything else. So we realized we didn't need all those people. We could crew up in Mexico with an incredibly competent and talented Mexican crew, and then not have to have the expense and drama, frankly, of bringing people from the States.
And you also said you learned over time, maybe, or maybe that was the project that taught you that if you had people from Mexico, that it would go smoother with the locals, with whatever law enforcement was around, with whoever was enforcing this film shoot.
Absolutely, absolutely. It would have gone smoother and less expensive, right? And we learned that. Those are lessons you learn. And it was the first film, and so we were just kind of figuring it out, taking a lot of advice. People are saying, "Hey, you need to do this, you need to do that," and he hires somebody, and then he calls his friends and people he knows, and and then everybody crews up like that. Where it was a full union show, and as you know, when you're a union show, they don't work for the producers; they work for their department head, and they work for the payroll company. So they're the employer of record. So sometimes they do what you say, sometimes they don't. And so, but we kept it together, all together, and it was a good learning experience. And if you have enough money, it's fine. You can bring people anywhere. James Bond movies and X-Men, they film all over the world, and they bring this whole, big machine with them that's like a city, and they have to. But if you have that kind of money, that's what you do with it, I guess. And then you create your own little bubble of your comfort wherever you go. So, but most people don't have that. Not in indie film, have that kind of money, and so that money is usually not the best money spent, if I'm honest.
And so was it after your first film as the producer that you realized, I don't need to go back to LA, or you had already made that decision?
I mean, go back to LA for crew?
A crew is one thing, or to piece together the project and pitch the idea maybe, but in terms of living full-time?
No, I realized, that, we did a little piece of the movie in LA, the first movie, La Línea, the line. And the cost of that 1 week was astronomical in relation to what it was the rest of the 4 weeks. It's astronomical. And so you realize, why didn't we just do the whole film in Mexico? Why did we need to go to Long Beach and shoot that scene? And it was just the location costs and the permit costs and everything are 10 times the amount. So like I said, the learning moment, the teachable moment in that would be to have trusted the system and just take everything there and do most of the things there, and put most of the stuff on the screen, as opposed to putting so much money into creating a bubble that makes everybody, quote, comfortable.
I heard you say in another interview that a common thing for a lot of filmmakers, actors, screenwriters is that they think their first film is going to sort of set the trajectory for the rest of their career. Like maybe they get a lot of praise, they walk the red carpet, people are emailing you, and you think that it's up from there, and that it's actually very humbling to see that it's not?
Yes, I do. Certainly, I was humbled. Our crew was humbled. Our group. The first film we did, had Andy Garcia in it. A whole bunch of people. There was red carpets. There was premieres. There was all kinds of great screenings and everything else. And you kind of put Weinsteins are calling you. The agencies are calling you, and you realize that we're not given in this world, in this universe of film that we've decided to be in, there is no stability in it. I mean, there's no, the trajectory is what it becomes, and you have to make it. It never goes to easy street. And we were doing a lot of things, thinking that we were trying to get this bigger film made. It's just, you're going to do this one this size, and the next one's going to be the next size. Well, it turned out the next one was half the size, and then the next one half the size of that. So that is my filmmaking journey. It doesn't go like that. It's all over the place. And I realized that, we can go back to the original idea, which is just to keep working and not let anything get in the way, not let all the needs to set things up here and set things up here and raise all this money. Let's find a way to just keep making films and add value. And so my trajectory went through, this kind of organic film school. Because when I was with the first film, I didn't really understand much about what was going on. There was a bunch of experts around me that knew everything. And they said, you're the big boss. And so you go over there and you get an assistant and do all this different stuff. And it was really cool. But I didn't know everything that was all the different machinations of what was happening. And it cost us, frankly. If I would have known that now, I'd have been like, wait a minute, you don't need that and this and that. You could just have that. Why are we paying for all three? But I didn't know any better. And so I wouldn't change a thing. I learned so much now. I can do everything now. I know about all the different elements of the film business. It's funny, sometimes we do production services and you see directors come in and they don't know these things. They don't know, they just say, I just want this. And it's like, oh, okay, but you don't need that. But I want it because they say we want it and everything else. But now I know what we want and need. I can distill it down to what's on the screen. Because at the end of the day, if you want to keep your budgets at the level that you can keep working consistently in independent film, you have to just worry about what's on that screen. Because what's behind it might not always be very pretty to watch the sausage being made. But as long as we get what we want on the screen, then that's what matters. As long as we get into the edit and we can have everything we need, that's what counts. And so, we do sometimes smaller films now. We do a little bit larger films, and we can do them all. And we're comfortable at all budget levels. And sometimes it's about the expectations that people have and, the optics you need to create for a client, which is all money. I tell them that too. I said, if you let us do it and you're not worried about it, then we can do it for less. If you're there watching us, everything is going to be a little bit more because it's our job to make sure that the optics are correct and you have a certain type of experience that you're expecting.
And you said you had people, maybe well-meaning, in your ear saying it needs to be this way. Mm-hmm. And so maybe more money was spent or things were done in a different way. How much exposure to the industry did you have growing up? You said you lived in LA briefly, or?
I did. I had almost none. Just especially not production. I had been working for a guy by the name of Ron Shusett for a while, who's the writer-producer of Alien, Total Recall, Minority Report. And, I was on the development side with him and working with his management to get some projects off the ground. But as far as on-set production, it was just this huge mystery to me. And, it feels glamorous. It's like you're on set and all these things are going on and all these people with the headphones and they're calling you sir, and it's really intoxicating. But I had really no real idea of what was going on, other than the basic leadership stuff. Okay, I make sure that everybody's paid and things of that sort. But, as far as knowing the intricate details of production, I really didn't know much at all. But you need to know. You need to know a lot, because if people will tell you, you need this kind of camera and you need these things with the camera, and you need this and that and this and that, and you're doing a shot that could be done on sticks with a doorway dolly. And you don't always need everything they're talking about. You need, so in order for you to be able to look at them squint-eyed and say, please don't tell me you need that, because I know we don't need it. I know exactly what we need, and we can just do it like that. So this is part of that learning process, over, failure and all of the things that you learn through a trial and error and failure, frankly.
And so for a first film, a director or producer may have to take it a little bit and nod their head, and then maybe after third film, they can have that conversation?
Yeah. First film is, you're nervous half the time. It's a lot of pressure to direct a film. And it's more pressure than I think people think it's going to be. I've seen it drive people literally crazy. And they just go crazy and just start doing crazy things and saying crazy things. And I'll tell you, once you get that through that process, then you at least you can get through it, and you know that you can get through it emotionally, and you learn a lot from that. And your second, third projects, then you can start to tell people, hey, I know what we need. I know what we need. I know we don't need that. And you learn to listen to people around you that you trust, and make sure that you don't get sucked into people's own agendas of what they need. You just make sure that you serve the product, you serve the movie, always. And you just keep that in mind, always. You're serving the final product. You serve the final edit more than you do, getting all this crazy outside coverage that that you'll never need. But that comes from experience. And it has to be a full process, meaning through the edit. Because the editing is the most important thing I've learned, is editing. Because what that teaches you is what you need and what you don't need. I don't know, if you just watch a cut of your film 6 months after you shoot it, you don't know how they made those decisions to get to there. If you sit there with the editor, okay, we're going to go from here, create the geography of the room. We're going to get cut into coverage. What is the point of the film? We're going to have to, they shake hands, let's get that on an insert or a special, and then you cut back out to the geography. When you edit, you learn that. So when you're in there filming, you know that that's what you need. And so you don't have to beat up your actors with something on some shot list or a lot of storyboards that maybe somebody might have done for you. You can just say, I got it. And a lot of people will thank you for that.
Is there a way to handle agendas with finesse?
Yeah, well, I personally have a very calm directing style and producing style. I don't get bent out of shape. But you try to listen to what they are saying, and you listen to it, and then you have to just say, well, we don't need that, or we do need it. If they have an agenda, meaning if they're thinking, hey, this is going to be a shot for my reel as a DP or something, I want the shot for your reel too, if we can afford it, and if we have time, and if it makes sense. Other than that, we're going to have a shot for the end cut of the movie. And so you just have to be firm. But if people look at you and you're talking to them, they'll know if you know what you're talking about or not. It's very hard to look at somebody and say, hey, I know that we need this and that and that and this, or this shot and this and that. And I look at them and say, no, we don't. We don't need it. And we've got everything we need on the scene. I know you want the big boom up, dolly down, crossover, push in. I get it. I want that too, but we got to move on. So you just be kind about it. I don't yell or anything like that, but you must assert your authority on a set, because there's too much going on to not have a clear line of authority. And so I make sure that I do that with kindness, but I'm relatively firm about it.
Do you think the agendas are stronger in Los Angeles or in Mexico, or they're different agendas?
You know, this is an opinion, very much stronger in Los Angeles. You know, when you have American crew, I've done scenes here, days of filming here. It's a very, very different thing. You get people that are very much concerned about how they're going to look, be perceived, be blamed, things of that sort. And you'll hear a lot in the States of, hey, this is going to have my name on it, so I don't feel comfortable with this. My name's on there as the gaffer, so I need to make sure that the lighting's right. I don't find that in Mexico at all. And I've worked with a few crews there. It's just the work ethic is a little bit different. They defer to the director, I think, a little bit more. But then, look, if you're going to build a career in LA, you've got to get a reel. You got to get a bunch of different stuff going on, and it's important. You know, you have to keep the quality of your work at a certain level, and you have to keep your reputation as somebody easy to work with at a certain level, and that your work is done well. You can't, well, you know, that gaffer completely messed up the lighting, then you may never work again, or it might be difficult to work again. So there's a lot more pressures. I don't blame them for it. But it's different, and you know, I do, when your gaffer or whatever has their own website, you know, and their own reel, you know, that's like, okay, but you know, that shows that, look, that's what they're kind of supposed to do. They're supposed to get themselves out there. But, you know, when you're talking about, because all this is fixed with a lot of money. If you have a huge budget, then you can have those people. But when you know that you're going to be in the trenches of an indie, you know it's going to get sticky. You know that everything's not going to go perfect. Then you have to, loyalty to the project and the product has to take precedent. I have a saying, and that's that I always protect the film over protecting myself. I protect the project. That means I got to take a lot of crap sometimes, a lot of abuse, but it has to always, what I'm doing has to always serve the final product. And if I have to take a little bit of someone yelling at me, or whatever the case is, then I'll take it. I find that sometimes in LA, there's a lot of fighting and bickering sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes. And they just, you know, people are upset and this guy's yelling at this guy and this guy and this, that. But another reason I think that is because a lot of times you'll go onto a set and the gaffer will never have worked with the grip, and the sound boom guy never worked with the sound mixer. It's like everybody comes in for like, and then gets used to each other. In Mexico, our crew is set. We've worked together all the time. So it's like a shorthand. So we know everybody's temperament, and you learn to weed out people that don't have the correct temperament for what we're trying to do. So once you do your 10th film or so, you know where your weak points are, and then you know where your strong points are. So you always have the ability to do the film with just a very small core group, and that protects the film. You know, in certain films, maybe in the States, one or two people go, it's like the film can't be done that day. You know what I'm saying? We can switch out loose positions and places and parts, so it all makes sense. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's much different, in my opinion, much different from Los Angeles to Mexico. But it's just different. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different. So, but for the money, that we try to put everything on the screen, so we just try to keep it as streamlined as possible.
When did you realize you could make a living doing action films in Mexico?
the first film, was a relatively larger film. So I kind of knew right away, I knew that as long as we could come in with a lower budget and provide the look that people wanted, there would be constant work there. I recognized that relatively early. Where I was not convinced was when I was trying to be a writer / producer in LA, and this thing comes up and somebody says, hey, I got a project and I got some guy with money, and you have these meetings and that never works out. But when I got to Mexico, I realized this is absolutely something that people need. We can blow up a car in the street. We can do chases through the streets without much problem at all. And I know that you can't do that in LA. And I realized that as far as buyers and what it takes to sell a film, they want action a lot of the times. It's the easiest thing to sell for distributors. And if we can give, relatively high quality action films that have a nice big production value at a very, very low cost with, kind of lower risk, less permits, less all that stuff, then there would pretty much always be work for us. I mean, we've had dry spells, but there's always somebody calling and saying, hey, I got a film, it's based in Mexico. What do you think? But we always usually say, let's read the script and we'll see how we think we can work it out. But we usually try to say yes. We're not really afraid of any of the film challenges or budgetary challenges. We try to say yes on most things, unless we feel that it's not a good fit. As far as dynamic wise, unless we feel like these people might be problematic, or they want too much for, they don't have enough, things of that sort. But if things work out, we try to do as much as we can. Stay working. Just keep it going. That's what we do. And a lot of people are trying to find the work. They're every day. They're on the phone. They're at coffee shops. They're taking meetings, and we just kind of keep just chugging along. And so yeah, it would been kind of toward the beginning. I always felt like this is something that, because I know enough about Hollywood to know that this is something that's absolutely needed, to be able to make a film for a lower price and get a bigger production value, go 360, give the filmmaker, if it's not me, give the filmmaker a 360 view at something, because you can't do that on Hollywood Boulevard without, but I can do it in Revolution Boulevard and TJ.
Can you explain why the movie business isn't pure art?
No, it's not at all. I mean, and you learn that quick too. In fact, movie business, and certainly directing, is not art. Directing is, and I don't know how the scholars look at it, but I consider it craft more than it is art. You're putting people together and things together to create an outcome, a product. The film business is truly a business because you learn this. And one of the things you learn when you get your first film into the market is, especially an independent film, is all the bad news that you get about how the film's not selling like it was supposed to. We're supposed to sell this much that they tell you on this sheet that you think I'm gonna be rich, and it didn't sell that amount. And of course, it's always our fault, the filmmaker's fault. But you realize that, in order to make the films have to be collateralized. It's like any other product. Anything is collateralized. So what is the film collateralized by? It's collateralized by its unsold territories. And it's so if they think it's worth $1 million, they'll give you 500,000. They think it's worth 5 million, they'll give you 2 million, so forth and so on. And so when you approach that side of it, the more you know about that, the better. Because if you go in there blind about that, like, oh, you know what? This is going to be the next Tarantino movie or something, and people really don't care about that. They really care about, how can I collateralize it? How can I make sure that if I put in $2 million, I'm going to get out this much money? What collateralizes it? And it collateralized, obviously, by the subject matter, but that's minimal these days. It's about the actor. That's how you collateralize it. So you realize it's a business of collateralization. And if you can collateralize, you come to them with the collateral. We can do this movie with this person for this much. They do their calculus, and you can keep working. If you go and say, hey, I wrote this amazing script, and my friends from acting class are going to be in it, and they're the best. It's pure art. Well, if you have a rich uncle, maybe. But if you take it into where the money is, because the money is in finance and banks and things like that, and they'll collateralize if it's collateralized, they'll finance anything. So if you can show that, you learn in the process to show that you understand that. And you always don't even have to have the collateral. If they know that you know it as a filmmaker, they trust you more, because you're not just out there on cloud nine trying to make some kind of wonderful piece of art that everybody can look at, but no one can figure out a way to get any kind of return on. So
that probably doesn't happen with the first or second film, correct?
no, not that I know of. My first film was going to be this big piece of art, and it was written that way. I think now we could have commercialized it a little bit more. We had some pretty artistic themes in it. But I liked art too. I would love to get to the point where it was art for me, and I could step back a little bit from the business and just say, hey, let's just do something that's just really, really good. We have this saying, like, because anytime you do action films that are not X-Men or Fast and Furious or Die Hard, they dog them. Because people aren't forgiving about that. They say, look, an action scene is an action scene. They have 30 days and $15 million to do it. You have before lunch and $5,000 to do it. They don't care. They just want the action scene to be right. But I always say, if you ever really want to get great reviews, just take the action out. Just do talking in art films, and just have people, talking to each other and make it interesting, and people will love it. It's the action that has to sell, and it's very hard to do that on low budgets. You learn that, and you have to take your hits in the reviews and things like that. I don't really look at reviews, but you realize that that's what it is. That people don't forgive. It's just like a comedy. You can make any kind of comedy you want, but is it funny? That's all people care about. Is it funny? Do a film. They could do a film in a small room, a small house, but is it scary? And so, at the end of the day, it's art, and it's a mixture of art and commerce. But, my goal is to get to the more artistic stuff and step back from the business, because it definitely colors the way that you film. It colors the way you shoot, and it colors the way that you approach your filmmaking journey. I'd rather it be more art.
You say that producers want more action and the director wants less?
That's a good question. I would say the producers, meaning the financiers, distributors, want more action.
Sure.
That's for sure. As far as the producer side, they just want to, bring it in on budget and get it done as efficiently as possible and get it out and get it, do their job. Distributors and sales agents want more action for sure. As far as me as a director, for example, I would prefer to have less action unless it's super motivated, meaning it has to mean something. I don't want to, if I'm trying to get to the door, if I'm trying to get out the door and there's a guy in front of me, I have to do this, that to get to the door. That's the kind of action. I don't want to sit in here and fight just to fight and just break things and everything. It has to be motivated. So as long as it has it's motivated within the larger story, then action is great. But action for the sake of action, unless it's done in this huge way that's so interesting to look at, like in X-Men and things like that, where it's just so interesting to sit back and just enjoy it, I would prefer to have less action as a director.
But even, let's say, Sicario,
Yes.
if I think back to it, there were quiet moments. There
Very
was stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made some of the action even greater.
That's correct. Sicario, Man on Fire, movies like that, it's much more about the story. It's much more about the characters and the relationships. And the action then is more intense when you care about the people, as you know. And so when the story stakes are high, when the character stakes are high, then that one punch is a lot more impactful than it would be is if you don't care about the character, or if they just show up, in the old Hong Kong movies, people just rotated in and out, to beat the guy up, So we have a lot of different ways to skin that cat as far as making sure that it's motivated. But I do absolutely, want to make sure that it's motivated. And if given the opportunity, I would love to make films that have less action in them. But people come to Mexico, they want to do explosions and things like that. So we do them as much as possible and try to make it interesting and keep it within the story.
Has a distributor ever said, we can't pre-sell this territory unless there's this, and this type of fighting or scene? Or
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tell me that all the time. They say it needs to have this much action in it, and page 10 needs to have this happen, page 20 needs to have that happen. So we write them that way now. We just pack them in with action. So, and then sometimes we don't shoot everything. We try, but I mean, you can only shoot what you can get to. But sometimes, we do the best we can. But if there's just nothing but pure action in the script, then you have to think, well, if the guy's going to go from the coffee shop to the restaurant, maybe he'll just have to kill, instead of the 8 people that it says in the script, maybe he can kill 5. Stuff like that. It still has the same thing, but you have to, compromise and make sure that you can actually get it done with your resources and make it good. I think the key to being a good action director is understanding your resources. You can't have no money and then want to do a big car flip. It's just not going to look right. So you say, well, instead of doing a car flip, let's make it crash into the tree. And it's really the same thing. But sometimes it's not to the distributors, but you just don't have the money to do the car flip. So you have to make certain compromises. And as long as you can make it and give it the same energy and give it the same punch in the project, in the movie, then it usually is okay. But we do try to follow the script as much as possible. But sometimes action can be a little gratuitous too. Just especially when it's in Mexico, there's just cartels coming at you, thug 1, thug 2, bad guy 1, big guy 3, all these people coming at you, and it begins to look like you're shooting zombies or something. So we try to make sure, when you get to set, you're looking at it and say, if the guy can get from there to there, he can take out these 3 guys and punch this guy and get out. It doesn't have to be 15 guys all the time. So we look at it and make sure that it looks right.
What about for the opening? How is it something immediate? You've got to see something blow up or something happen.
Well, I think that in any kind of story structure, which I'm not an expert, although I am a writer and I've written the first films that we did, you have to you know, create something that brings people in, you know. And it doesn't always have to be an explosion or an action scene. And sometimes that's nice, but it has to, you know, create a question that people want to sit around and wait to find out the answer. So sometimes that can be in the form of action. It's all of a sudden you see a guy, bam, he gets shot, he falls down, and then and then you got to figure out, okay, why did that guy get shot and fall down? And then that's what our story's about. It's telling us and informing us of what may have happened in that first scene. But I will tell you that in script structure, things do have to happen within the first 10 pages, minimum 20 pages, or you will lose people. We're in a era and an age where people scrub 3-minute videos. They're like, this is too long. And so you have to grab people's attention and keep it but you can do that in a lot of ways, with compelling story, with a question, with something, but you can't just kind of just float in to the film unless you have some great actor that you can't take your eyes off, that maybe you'll follow them for a little bit longer. If you're doing a kind of a lower budget action film, you have to bring them in right away.
But there has to be some resting points. It can't just be all, because then nothing. You can't measure anything against.
You're absolutely right. I'm big on that because the film has to breathe. You got to be able to sit back and take in what you're seeing and see where it means in the overall story. You can't just have this thing where you're just constantly being bombarded with different things that are like action-based things. You have to take a minute to sit back and let the characters sit back and reflect and contemplate and figure out whatever way that they're getting into, whatever they got into, they have to figure out a way out of it. I always tell an actor, it's interesting, it's pretty much universal. They'll be told something, or they'll hear a gunshot and then they'll go do something. I said, always allow yourself to react to it like it's foreign to you. Bam, gunshot. Take a second. Bam, gunshot, and they run. You'd say, no, just take a minute and let it register what's happened, then run. Let register what they just told you, then respond to it. Because they've been reading the script and doing it on coverage 10 times, so they just can react. But let it sink in, and I think you can do that with the storyline in total. You have to let things sink in a little bit, so it gives people time to care, gives people time to, and time and space and emotional space to make their decision on whether they like the character, who they want to win, who they hate, how much they hate them, and figure out, go along with you and trying to figure out the story themselves, and then you can kind of get there together with you and the audience at the same time.
Why do you say the movie business is a weird business?
Well, yeah, among other things, it's a business that people really, really, really want to be in it and be successful at it and make a living. So it attracts interesting characters a lot of the time. It attracts people that risk takers. It attracts people that, let's be real, can't always be conforming into a corporate environment. They wouldn't do well in there. It's not always they wouldn't do well because they didn't want to do well. Sometimes they wouldn't do well because people would have a difficult time dealing with them. So you're dealing with people that really, really want to make this thing work, but it's very difficult to make work. So when you get into it and there's people around you trying to make their film careers work, trying to make their movie and television careers work, you get people that just will do strange things and stab you in the back, stab their friends in the back, snitch people out. There's a lot at stake, because the rewards are amazing. It's the best business in the world, and not everybody can be in it. And so once you get your foot in the door, and you can feel yourself maybe slipping, maybe not going as way it's supposed to, people can hold on super tight to try to stay in the business, to try to make it not my fault. This I was told this, and this guy told me to do this, and all this different stuff, and so it's that, and then it's also a little weird, because it's just a business that not everybody would want to be in. Although the glamour part's cool, glamorous and red carpets and everything else, but when rubber hits the road, it's a lot of disappointment. It's a lot of rejection. It can be incredibly hard work, sometimes for little or nothing as you're establishing yourself. And you're dealing with interesting characters. I doubt it's like selling insurance. Like, you're going to look at insurance salesman and the manager and the regional manager. I mean, you get some people from the drug world. You get people from criminals. You get people that come in that made money in some other field and just come in and want to do this. And so it brings people from all different areas and all different walks of life. And so maybe weird is not the best term, but it's interesting for sure.
Not for the faint of heart.
No, do not. You have to be tough as nails to be in this business. I say that people in film business are some of the best employees you'll ever have in any work, because you can't make mistakes. It's one of the only professions where you cannot make a mistake, and you walk around knowing I can't make any mistakes. I can't make a mistake. It's, oh, that's okay. No, you lose your day. You can't lose your day. You can't lose your sun, meaning the sunlight. You can't mess something up and hurt an actor. You can't. There are no mistakes. And so you approach every day with that in mind. So everything, and of course mistakes are made, but you still have that mindset, no mistakes, and you live with that. So.
And there's also the element of wanting to be agreeable and easy to work with, but knowing that some things on the surface are not what they appear to be. And to watch your back, but keeping a smile on your face.
Yeah, being agreeable, it's a big deal. Most of when I interview people, especially actors, to come down to Mexico, it's all temperament to me. I mean, I'm sure I can get them to where they need to be performance-wise, but temperament, anything. See, it's not like I said before, it's not like we're calling somebody to go to North Hollywood and they live in Burbank. You have to take them there and host them there for 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. Any piece of their personality that's unmanageable will come out in those 3 weeks. Believe me, it's going to come out. You need to make sure that these people have that kind of, are stable in that way, and not going to, and there's ways to tell. You can just talk to them about things and see and let them know, look, things are not going to go perfect. They're not. But it's how you deal with that. Can you adjust? Can you pivot? Are you going to be cool? Are you going to make a nightmare scenario for everybody? Are you going to call your manager and say, this guy didn't give me, my yellow candy wasn't there, and this is a nightmare, and then create that toxic energy inside the set. So how people's temperament is everything to me, because you have to live with them. I can put you on a plane where you wouldn't want to be with somebody for 3 hours, much less 3 weeks. And you have to really kind of be able to know that. And so I have a very calm demeanor all the time. I'm cool about stuff all the time. I can adjust and pivot. But dealing with people that are bullies and things like that can be really, really problematic. And and in the end, they end up costing money and causing problems all around. So we learn to kind of look for that first, even before the talent, and then we move to, can you do it?
Suppose someone's easy to work with. What about trust factor? How do you determine that?
Trust as far as,
Although there's many levels of trust, just maybe trust in terms of, I guess there's probably different layers of it. So trust being on the set, trust having them as someone you would continually call back,
okay.
trust in your quote unquote, and for lack of a better term, sorry, inner circle. I
Yeah,
realize that's a cliche
yeah.
term.
One thing you learn in film is that you got to keep your film circle relatively small. But I have built over time people that I genuinely trust, and but it takes a little bit of time, and you need to see them in various situations. Everything's going smooth. You don't know whether or not you can trust them in a jam. Anybody that's done any kind of decent number of independent films has been in a lot of jams. And it's how you deal with that, and you watch them and you analyze how they deal with that. And at the end of the day, are they trying to be toxic and turn everybody against everybody? Or at the end of the day, are they having a drink and saying that day sucked, but I think tomorrow's going to be better? I'll take the guy who says, I have the drink with, and tomorrow's going to be better with the less talent over the other guy or girl that is causing the problems. You have to realize you're basically in a foreign country. You're very vulnerable. You can't have revolts and strikes and things like that. This is very dangerous. And so you can't even, and you can't have people walking off. You have somebody that your sound guy, forget about this. I'm walking. Well, who's going to do the sound? I mean, you can find somebody, but you see what I'm saying? You have to be able to trust that people are going to put the movie first and not make it about them all the time. So I think that trust in that way, and just time. You have to have been through things with people so that you understand how they'll react, and you can trust them to be there when things get a little chaotic, and they'll keep themselves centered and focused during that time. Because working within chaos is something you must learn to do. And pressure, high pressure, chaos, and pivot, be able to, we're going to shoot here, okay, but the car's not here. Turn around, shoot the other way until the car gets here. So you have to be able to pivot without saying, I can't believe the car's not here. This is, you just got to just figure it out and just keep moving, So you find people that will do that. The crew we have now will 100% do that. They pivot without a problem. So I have tons of trust in them.
You've mentioned that a beautiful lesson for creative people is getting knocked down.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? It sounds troubling. Why would that be good?
Well, it's been said a lot. You don't know who you are until you've been knocked down, and figure out who you are is always in how you get up and how gracefully you can get up without retaining too much anger and resentment for things. You're gonna get knocked down in the film business. I don't care how high up you are. There's gonna be issues, and when you've been down, then you can get up. We had a film that we were going to do that was going to be this bigger film. It was going to be the one that goes up and up, and it got all the way to location scouting, everything. We had production offices, everything, and something happened, and the thing just, the bottom just dropped out of it. And we literally were in the production office like, they said, movie's off. We're like, what are we gonna do now? And a lot of people just went their separate ways and everything else. And I still remember how kind of low that felt. And then it wasn't like, you try to save it. Oh, maybe we can go over here and somebody will do it. And that didn't work. So we just had nothing, had to start over from scratch. And I thought, wow, what a great lesson that is. What a great humbling experience. So I know now that it's not just going to go just like I want it. So we need to be able to figure out how to bring yourself back up from that. And in that is where you learn the most valuable lessons in life and in film. In life, obviously, it's, how you, test your inner strength and ability to stay focused. In film, you learn how to do things that you were going to hire 3 guys to do. Now you can hire 1 guy to do. And you learn that you can do it with the 1 guy if you help. You learn how these things all work and how they all work together, and you become a better filmmaker that way. So when you get knocked down, that's where the lessons are. I mean, like I had said before, the first film, we were kind of on cloud 9. We didn't know what was going on. We just knew, well, 3 weeks later, we're going to be on some red carpet somewhere, and William Morris is going to call someone to sign us. None of that happened. So the real lessons were learned after we had that thing fall out from under us and say, okay, now we can rebuild. Now we can rebuild with something solid where we know what we're doing, where we know how to get it done. And we can then look at an investor or look at a distributor or someone who's giving an MG or whatever and say, I know exactly how to get this film done. We don't have to depend on anybody that we don't know. We know exactly how to get it done. And that confidence, in that gleam in your eye, that confidence, is something that financiers want to see. That you're not thinking about how great you're going to be, that you're thinking about the film, you're thinking about their investment, you're thinking about all the elements, and that if something happens, you can fix it. You're not just going to fall apart on the ground. You know how to pick yourself back up and pick your production back up and keep it moving forward. That's a much better investment than if you've never been knocked down.
Can you tell when you go to hire someone or you have an interview with someone, for whatever it is, whether it's a script reading, a producer, and there's something in you that knows that person hasn't been knocked down and maybe they're not going to weather a tougher shoot, something with a little more challenge, a little more edge to it?
Absolutely. You can tell. You can tell it right in their eyes. I mean, you don't want to be prejudiced against them, meaning in that way, but it's a lot of times you can tell by what they ask for. If they say, "I need this, I need that, and I need this," and then you say, "Well, we might not have that." How are we going to do the film if we don't have that? Well, if you haven't done the film without that, then you might be on the wrong film, because we may have that and we may be able to get that, but it can't be like, well, you're doing DP stuff, and the guy says, well, I can't work without a focus puller. Well, most DPs don't want to work without a focus puller and have a focus puller. We have focus pullers, but the DPs that are doing indie films, most of them know that they've at some point had to pull their own focus. Okay, so if you get somebody that says, well, I've never worked without a focus puller, well, that may not be the right guy for us. Because even though we'll give them a focus puller, it's still potentially problematic that they have maybe never been on enough films and had those kind of experience. So if something happens, the focus puller, gets sick or runs off or something, we can still get the film done, and things don't stop unless things go exactly the way they're supposed to go. So I think that's a decent example of it. But it can be a lot of things, you know. It's very rare to find an actor that has not been knocked down. That's very common. They've all had, any actor has dealt with massive amounts of rejection, massive amounts of disappointment. They know they were perfect for the role, they did a perfect read, and they never got the call back. Or they got the call back, and then they gave the part to the producer's girlfriend or something like that. They come in pretty strong in that area of things not going their way. So I give them that credit. And certainly directors and filmmakers, you know, you go through it constantly of having, you know, this is going to go and it doesn't go, and this is going to go and this is going to go. It's one of the reasons we moved to Mexico. We just stay with the real stuff.
So based on what someone asks, questions, and their needs, you can tell how it'll work out?
I think so. You know, if you ask the right questions. You know, I ask, what was the lowest budget movie you've ever made? Let's say I'm talking to a crew member. Say, have you ever, you know, have you did student type films, things like that? And that'll kind of inform you as to, you know, how cooperative they'll be. And, you know, what do you do if there's not enough time or daylight? What do you do? And, well, you know, we'll just shoot tomorrow. No, you can't shoot tomorrow. What are you going to do? Well, they can always figure something out. I'll put the light up here like this. We'll do like this. We'll bring it in close. We'll just, we'll do the reverse so we see the sun, and then we'll turn around and I'll light it this way. There's all kinds of things you can do. So you're always looking for flexibility. You're looking for people that feel like they can get it done regardless of the situation and the scenario. You know, it's the most important thing. So, and you know, I don't see a lot of people that are really. I've had to say, you know what, I can't have that person. It's not a lot. Most people in film have come up through the same system of with their friends and student films and short films, and you know they've seen it all most of the time. So it's not like you know, people coming out of some prestigious school where they've never seen anything. I mean, you know, you see people. A lot of people go to film school and, you know, to SC or UCLA, and that's great. But everybody knows that it's on set experience is what everybody's looking for.
Why do you say you can't make the movie you want? You have to make the movie that sells?
Yeah, I tend to believe that goes all the way up the line. When I look at place, you know, Scorsese and Coppola and people like that, I think they're making the same kind of compromises in one way or the other, because ultimately first of all, there's just too many moving parts to just make everything exactly like you want, and there's too many chefs in the kitchen. There's the actors that have their ideas. There's going to be the producers and the distributors. And of course, the filmmakers are going to all have, everybody has their own ideas. And so you have to make something as close to where you want it as possible. But I doubt that there's the perfect movie that ended up on the final cut exactly the way it was intended to have been made. It's really a question of making sure that you get the story that makes sense and that does what it's supposed to do, both creatively and financially. That keeps you working. If you can get things done and, you know, make whatever compromises you need to make, but still have a certain level of creative integrity and make the experience good for people, then that's how you continue to work. And I think that it's an admirable goal to make the perfect film, you know, make the film that just one that we want to make, that doesn't have to have the action scene in the first 10 minutes. Only reason it would need the action scene in the first 10 minutes if our story requires it. If it doesn't, it requires it at minute 20, 30, it doesn't matter. So I think that we're all striving for that perfect film, the way we see it in our head. And sometimes it can be even a little bit better, but rarely. It's always a little bit better in your head than how it comes out, because it's just the nature of the creative process, the nature of the collaborative process, makes it so it doesn't just all exist in your mind's eye. It has to go through a lot of different people's mind's eyes, and other resource-based things, and through the edit and the final cut and the sound and everything else, to the point where, if you're lucky, you can be surprised and have it be another version of that perfect film. But and then it becomes maybe perfect in its own unique way. But as far as it coming out exactly the way it exists in your head, I just don't think that that's ever going to happen.
When you did your first film where you were the producer, did you already have a distributor working with you?
No, we did not. We did that film with private money, and we did not have a distributor. And if we would have, I'm sure they would have told us to do certain things different. Probably put a little bit more action in it and things like that. But when we had it, but once we did, this is where you get the dream stuff. Because once you have a movie like that in the can, people start to come at you like they want to sell it. And they tell you all kinds of stuff. We're going to give you a 4-picture deal. You give us that movie, and we're going to give you a 3-picture first look. We're going to do all this stuff. We're going to get you this. My friends over at William Morris, they're going to sign you as a writer, and they're going to do all this stuff. Once they get the movie, the first thing they do is do a trailer and start selling it. And all that glamour, washes away, because there's very few films that are attached to nothing like that film was. Had no distributor. It was just a disk drive with a movie with Andy Garcia and Ray Liotta and other people on it, on the film, and everybody wanted it. And so that's what blew our heads up a little bit, to think that we were on this, amazing thing. And you learn, like I said, you learn those lessons pretty quickly when they have this kind of less than cool trailer. I'm like, what? Why would they do a trailer like that? Because all they're doing is showing the action for the foreign buyers. And so I'm like, well, why didn't they do the trailer like that cool trailer I saw, the theatrical? And then of course they tell you, film's going to go theatrical. We're going to do all these things with it. This is going to be great. This is the beginning of our relationship. And, sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't.
So for your second film, did you have a distributor already attached?
Yes, I did. It actually was the same distributor as the first one, so let me be nice about it. But we did, and I directed it, and it was a completely different experience. I was, I was kind of green as a director, but I understood a lot of the production side stuff, and I also understood a lot of the editing stuff because I had done a lot of editing on the first film. So it was a lot different, but there was a distributor, and the distributor had already pre-sold it. It just so happened they had pre-sold it to this little company called Blockbuster the year they went out of business. So that order went out, and this is part of the fall down and get up program here. Wow. So it didn't do as good as it was supposed to do because it was designed for Blockbuster. So, but it was a beautiful film, and it was a good experience, and certainly learned a lot. And it's, I still consider it probably the best piece that we've done.
So you already saw it on the wall. You pictured yourself walking into the Blockbuster, or was Blockbuster
the one before,
going online at that time?
The film before, La Línea, The Line, was part of this Blockbuster premiere series that it became the #4 video in Blockbuster nationwide. And it had this thing where they had this new thing where they're going to do an independent film and give it the same space as a studio film. And so it was a program. So they had placed the orders for that program. And then they went out of business. We delivered in October. They went out of business, I think, in December. So they canceled it. But hey, like I said, it was still a good movie. It gave us the opportunity to make the film. And eventually it all worked out.
Why not just make the movie you want to make?
Well, I mean, if I had the rich uncle, or if I was the rich uncle, then I probably could make it. And I think I would. I have a couple scripts that I would just want to make exactly the film the way it is. But, you kind of have to make the decision. You want to keep working and keep moving the career down the path, or do you want to create the art that you want? And I think that you can find a balance in that. But at this point, you have to have something to show. You have to have a reel. You have to have movies that you've done. You've got to show, in certain cases, you have to show numbers. So you have to make the film that you're able to make. And investors tend to like that. Distributors tend to like that more than, hey, I'm going to make the film I want to make it. It doesn't matter, if you make or lose your money. We try to do the film as best we can and pepper in all those beautiful moments and pepper in all that beautiful cinematography. But at the end of the day, we have to make the films that people are either giving us money to make, or that the market will bear. So, I would very much like to do a film just the way I see it, just the way every shot. I want to do it this way. I want to do the push in here. I want to do the side shot here. But sometimes there's always going to be compromises in that. And so I think that the key is to make the film that you're making the film you want to make. If you can find that balance inside yourself and inside the filmmaking experience and the product, I think that's a better way to try to kind of maybe find it. Love what you're doing. Maybe it wasn't exactly what you saw, but find the beauty and say, that's amazing. And you have those moments. And some moments are like, well, are a little bit less, but you find the moments and you do your best to string those moments together and then still keep everybody happy so that you can keep moving forward. The true enemy is not moving forward. You have to keep making the films, and you have to keep on pushing that forward. Put the little pieces onto your reel, put the little pieces onto experience, learn the pieces of information, make those contacts. Then you move toward the more perfect filmmaking experience that way. But that is, in my opinion, the more safe trajectory. I don't know if you want to call it safe, but it's the more practical one. To just wait until say, hey, I want somebody to get how brilliant this is, how brilliant this film will be. Well, what have you done? Well, I've done a couple shorts and a student film. Okay. I'd rather show them a vast example of a lot of things that we've done. And they understand that we can get things done and we can get things done efficiently, and we can follow through and pivot and be flexible and bring things back from the brink of disaster, things like that. And then eventually you will get the faith and confidence to do something that is that masterpiece. I think that's just one way to get to the masterpiece. I'm sure some people will sit and wait and send it out enough times and somebody will recognize it and put money into it or whatever. But for me, you just got to take the pieces of everything, even if it's not the best film. You take the pieces that are, show that, and you move the program forward.
And the name of your second film that was supposedly going to be in Blockbuster was?
It's called Across the Line, The Exodus of Charlie Wright. Now, the thing is, the distributor, you learn this about distributors, they always want to put some kind of thing that was related to the original movie, which was Across the Line. But the original name was called The Exodus of Charlie Wright. So, and I thought that was the tone of the movie, but they wanted to put Across the Line in front of it. So it's fine. I got used to it eventually. Pivot.
Do you think most people would have given up after that experience? So this was like what you said, your second film. You came close to having it in Blockbusters. Unfortunately, Blockbuster pivoted out of business, and most people would have given up. You said you talked about having a long tail, like a body of work, and not waiting.
A lot of people I know did, or just felt folded back and kind of waited for something to happen. Some people would have quit, and but a lot of people wouldn't have. I mean, I think that getting your films, having some sort of disappointment in film is just part of the business, and it's just, and if you really can't handle that, especially you can take a break and regroup, which we kind of did a little bit. Take a break and regroup, but if you give up after your second film, then you're probably not in the right business. To be honest with you, you got to keep it moving. You got to really give it a certain amount of time, and just nothing happening, and then you say, okay, well maybe I go back to selling insurance or something. But you got to give it the old college try. The way I look at it is this: if I want to be a doctor, I can't go out, if we're in 2022, I'm not going to be a doctor in 2023. It's going to take me 4 years undergrad, 4 years med school, then some other things. Anything that you're really, it's meaningful in, and especially, and there's a lot more doctors than there are directors. Anything is complicated and unique as being a director, it's not going to take 2 years. It's going to take 10 years, 12 years. And you shouldn't feel as though some kind of failure or some sort of disappointments they're all part of your school. They're all part of, for undergrad. Then you got to do it one way or the other. The world doesn't work that, you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to do this and just do it. You've got to go through the process. And I think if you look at it like that, if you have that perspective that I'm on year 3, am I really supposed to be a big-time hotshot director? Well, you know how the media does. They'll show you those people. But for every one of those people, they don't show you the hundreds of thousands that didn't happen for. So I always looked at it like, it's going to take a certain amount of time. What we're doing is a very unique thing. It's very sought after. There's not that many people that can do it. And it's going to take a certain amount of time. So just put in the time, put in the work, get ready for the hits, learn the lessons, and then eventually you'll come out on, if you've got the talent and the temperament and the patience and the ability to adjust, then you can carve something out for yourself. And it'll just be to what degree you carve it out. So, but I think that if you can get through that, people will trust you and give you a chance. Yeah.
And also there's a high degree of skepticism that someone will be a director, whereas if someone takes the proper, steps and they're in residency and all these different things, oh, this is so-and-so, he's going to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you introduce someone, this is so-and-so and he's going to be a director, mm-hmm. It's met with a different response. At least I would
Absolutely.
think so. Yeah.
No, it is because it's just like I'm a writer a lot, but what makes you a writer? Because in theory I've written 10 screenplays. The question is, how many of those screenplays have been produced, and what makes the difference between a writer or a professional writer and a successful writer, are 3 very separate and unique things. And so when you talk about director, either you're directing films or you're not. It's not about prepping the film or developing it or writing a film and, putting together the idea to do it. You have to get on a set and say, roll sound, roll cameras, action, whatever that is. And then, but you can't just stay and, do it on your iPhone or with your friends and your buddies. At some point, you've gotta, get yourself to the point where you can be noticed and appreciated, and someone to look at you and say, hey, I like what you do. Let's do a little bit more of that. So, you hear people say, I'm a director, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, and good for them. Maybe that's what they need to complete their process, and so that it makes sense for them. So, but at the end of the day, it's the market that dictates where we sit in it and our success. And so it's about understanding the balance between the business and the art, understanding team building, understanding how to put together the resources to keep yourself working and things like that will decide, ultimately, it's your reel. What have you done? Your reel or your IMDb and things like that. That's ultimately what you'll be judged by. So, you can talk, which is good. Like I said, don't put those people down that say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm writing, I'm directing. I think, great, that's fantastic. But you gotta actually get out there and get the work done too. You must. So.
For anyone starting out and they've never made an action film before, but they're serious about making one and they want to make several, what are some essentials they need to know?
One of the essentials is going to definitely be safety. You have to understand how, if you're going to do things like, for example, with guns, explosions, anything that has to do with kind of things that can be somewhat dangerous, you have to understand how to approach your day with the safety elements in mind. You can't think, well, I'm going to shoot off 10 rounds. You have to, recycle the gun, recycle, the way that you have to set up your day to do things like pyrotechnics, fight scenes, blood, things like that. You have to really take a certain amount of time the way you organize your day. So you have to know when you're looking at a scene, how will I get this done in the time frame that I need to get it done in without having to do too much compromise? So and when I say safety, I mean, everything has to be recycled in action. You can't just do it and then do it again. You have to do it and then do all the safety stuff and then do it again. So you have to plug that into the way that you schedule your day. I think that's probably the biggest one. The second one is that you have to realize what your limitations are and learn to work the limitations and not try to do something that's bigger than you can do because it won't look right. You have to be able to say, I can do this, but I can't do that. And then, because if you try to do this bigger, and it can look cheesy and it just takes you out of the movie. You'd rather do it smaller but have the same energy, give it the same energy. And if you can't get the car hitting the tree exactly, well, have them inside moving their head as they hitting steering wheel. That you can do. And then you can do sound design, things like that. So understand your limitations, and don't look at your budget clearly and say, okay, I can do these things on this budget. And don't try to overstep that. And then also, a lot for what kind of safety precautions have to be done, because the stunt coordinator, safety coordinator are going to be there, and they have to do that because people can and will get hurt. So you have to really think about that a lot. And lastly, I'd say lean on your stunt coordinator and your action coordinator and fight coordinators and choreographers. I mean, let them do their stuff. You know, I do. Just I step back. I don't even. I'm drinking coffee during that time because I let them do the work. They know basically what we need to have done, and let them do it so their voice is there doing that stuff. So it's not like my voice and their voice, and let them kind of lean on your stunt people and your fight people, and let them kind of organize it and do their thing.
What about the use of real items, guns, knives, explode, like detonators and things like that, versus prop ones? Is there something that in the film industry people are against using something that looks fake, but it may put people at risk?
We use almost all practical weapons and explosions in pyro. I've had that tragedy in New Mexico. People looking at it a little bit different, but just after that, we went right back into it. Distributors used to say, I don't want it to be put in post. I'd like to have it be practical. And the more practical stuff, it's something you can sell, in the film market. Say, these are all done with practical weapons. It's not just the muzzle flashes put in. And also when you're cycling the weapon, it's very, very difficult to put anything slow motion on the weapon to see bullets eject and things of that sort. The way that fire works in pyrotechnics, explosions and things like that is very unique. The billowing of the fire, especially if it's done high speed or in slow motion, it's very difficult to fake it. And so some distributors really appreciate that we do practical stuff, but it takes longer to do. And, people are kind of looking at it a little different now because of a couple different accidents that have happened. But we're super duper safe about it. And, we have a lot of experience of it. We're doing films in Tijuana, Mexico, so it's just a lot of cartel movies, so it's a lot of shootouts and shoot-ups and, bam, 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 and breaking stuff and breaking glass and things of that sort. So I personally like to see the bullets cycle out of the chamber. It's very difficult to fake that. And it's also difficult to fake a real muzzle flash. So, we're super safe about it, but we prefer to use practical weapons as much as possible. And the distributors appreciate it.
And breaking glass, can you actually simulate that or just recreate the sound?
No, there's something called sugar glass that I can take it and hit over your head, and it's like somebody touching you like that, and the glass shatters in a very real way. But the problem is transporting it, because you can't touch it a certain way, it'll break. You have to transport it like it's a diamond or something, because it will break. I mean, I've had 5-6 glasses, and they all broke. And they also break when you hand it to the actor to do it, and they break it. You have to say, hold it like this. But it's called sugar glass. But yeah, it's relatively common.
Why do you direct when you can also become a writer-producer? Why stay a director?
Because directing is 100% my passion. And it's craft. It's about inspiring more than it is about, it's about bringing people together and making everybody go in one direction, or helping everybody go in one direction. I'm much better at it. Producing, I tend to look at stuff too artistically. It's hard for me to say no. Some people, producers gotta say, no. I just say, well, wait a minute, he does need that shot, but we can't afford it. And another producer, we can't afford it, just do it like this. I'm like, well, it's gonna be better if it's done like this. Directing to me is, it's about people. It's about, bringing people together, and, leadership, inspiring people, and, working with people to make something beautiful, and you're right there on set, and you're watching the magic happen, shot by shot, and it's fun. It can be incredibly stressful, and it can be a lot of disappointment. But I feel like that's my area. I have in mind what I want to do. I know where it needs to go, and I have a very clear vision, and I'm relatively good at letting people know what the vision is, but letting them find their version of it. I'm not heavy-handed at all. I let them figure it out, and we figure it out together. That's how you get the true brilliance out of each scene, is to let everybody do the work. Don't over direct. Just let people work. Let them do their thing, and if it's a real big problem, you let them know. If not, let it play out.
How does the money come together for one of your projects?
In a couple different ways. Normally, someone, will send the script out, and we have a network of sales agents and distributors, and as long as we have an actor on the film that they like and that they can sell, they'll give us a minimum guarantee, and then we have places that we can go take that minimum guarantee and cash flow it. Depending on who that comes from, we can get between 80 and 120% of the face of the minimum guarantee. Thing about filming in Mexico, what happens normally, I'll back up just a little bit, is that normally that MG amount will not be enough. That's why people go to the rebate states, because then they can go get about another 30% or so, which will complete their budget. Maybe they have a little bit of cash or an investor, an equity investor. Generally speaking, we can keep our budgets low enough to work just with what we have with the minimum guarantee, which is why we're kind of unique in that way. What they give us with the minimum guarantee, we make the movie with that, whether it's the 80 or 120%. Sometimes there's a little bit of money in there, with gap money, but generally that's the way it works. And sometimes you just have people that just have money, and they come down and want to make a movie, and then but we like to. That's the Rich Uncle program. Isn't really one to build your career on, in my opinion. You want to have the right connections and the know-how to speak the language of those distributors and financiers. We have this person, this package, we have these people, we're going to film it here, here's the budget, here's the schedule, and then we've done it a million times. And then they say, okay, cool. They give you the paper, and once the paper is collateralized, there's a lot of people that will give you money for it. It's like if you go to, we're selling paper cups, and we get a order from Walmart for 100,000 paper cups. Someone will give you the money to make those cups. The key is you have to make sure that it's at the right price, and you know how to make the cups and things like that. But once you get the purchase order from Walmart, a lot of people give you the money to make it, as long as you know how to make it. So it's kind of like that.
You said previously we all need to know about the law of supply and demand.
Yes.
So is there like a crash course you could teach in a couple minutes?
Yeah, I tell that to a lot of people, actors especially, because actors sometimes will say, "Hey, I'm worth this much money, and I want this much money." I'll say, "Well, I'd love to pay that money, but we're all subject to the laws of supply and demand. And if I go to Germany, Japan, and Italy, and I say I have Joe Blow in my movie, whatever they tell me, I'll give you half of it. Chances are they're going to tell me I'm not going to give you any more money for him or her. And so I have to sell the film. So I understand that your services are your services, but I can't pay you premiums that I can't recoup. This is the laws of supply and demand. And we'd love to make our art and our wonderful films that we have in our minds, that we have thought about and dreamed about making. But at the end of the day, we have to supply what is in demand. And that's the difference, in my opinion, of working a lot and working a little. And it will be, maybe in the end of it, it'll be that, wow, you should have just made 2 great films and not 20 cool films. Maybe that would be if there was an alternate universe. But the path that we've taken is one that looks at what is in demand and helps to figure out a way to supply that demand so that the train keeps moving down the tracks. The enemy of the process is to not be moving. You have to keep moving, even if it's risky, even if every project, and let me tell you, every project is not a good project. Of the 28, 29 projects we've done, every one has not gone great. There's been, and there's no one else to blame but us or me. And those can be hard to come back from sometimes. But you don't do 28 films and have them all be perfect. It's just not going to happen. The key is keep moving. You keep adding value. You keep making sure that what you provide, in the end, gets finished and is put out into the market. Its success level, you really can't help or say too much about. It has a lot of different factors, but make sure that the quality stays very consistent, and people will keep coming back to you to figure out a way to get their films done. So we follow the demand and follow that up with trying to figure out a way to keep the supply as close to what we want as possible, but we're still falling under the same laws of supply and demand.
What is the market for your movies, and how do they end up making money?
Well, the kind of medium to low budget action movies, the market, it used to be kind of what the AFM market is, American Film Market. It used to be straight to video, streaming. Now it's mostly streaming. When we create the films, we don't make these films right now to be projected. One of the reasons is because some of the best films now are not projected. They're streamed. And so most of it's streaming. It's coming off of the old school video model, which is a point of sale model. Perusing Blockbuster, and that looks interesting, let me grab it. Now you're on streaming platforms, and so you look for Amazon, Netflix. We have Netflix films, we have Amazon films, Hulu, Tubi. Our films are everywhere. And so it still comes from the old system, though, which is the Van Damme, Seagal's world of action films, which is, it's formulaic a little bit. The thing is that we do, with my films specifically, is I add this artistic tinge to them. If you look at the reels and stuff, you'll see it. I try to do beautiful framing, center framing, things that are to make it look a little bit bigger, a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more composed, and not just shoot 'em up action and knock 'em down action. So I do a lot of beautiful composition, and then I get a lot of really, really good performances out of the actors. But at the end of the day, they kind of go into the same streaming platforms: Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, things like that. And that's okay. I think that's where things are at now. So I don't think much is getting projected these days. I mean, a lot sometimes, but I don't see films under $50, $60 million getting projected that much. And if so, it's an anomaly.
And your distributor is approaching these outlets, Tubi, Hulu, things like that? Not you personally?
No, the distributor does that. When we hand it off to the distributor, they send it out among the world. But usually they have, because like I said before about collateralization, usually it's collateralized in one way or the other. They already have these people interested, and they're waiting for it a lot of times. And so, as long as the film screens good, has a good trailer, and is filmed as is written or close to it, then it goes out on the platforms, and these platforms are subscription based. So it's not, I mean, they're going to get that subscription whether they like my movie or not. They're still going to get the $10 a month. So they need content. And so the content and choice, that's what people want. You can't look at the page and look at the Netflix page and there's 4 movies on there. They want choice. All the films aren't going to have the same quality, but they have good relationships. The distributors and sales agents have good relationships with these platforms, and they get it out there, and it's always nice to see them on there.
Can you explain what you mean by collateralized?
Well, collateralized meaning the money has to come through collateralization process, which will be that the distributor, sales agent, will have to have sold or at least have interested, let's call it Netflix or Amazon, in that movie to, let's say, $1 million or whatever, or 500,000, and then the other 500,000 they can sell in foreign sales. You have to have a piece of paper that they can take to a financial institution that says, I'm going to sell 500,000 to this one, and I've already talked to them, and they see this and see that. They know the director, they know Frazier's directing, they know what the subject matter is, they know that this actor is going to be in it. If it has those elements, it has a beginning, middle, and end, we'll buy it at this amount. So they can take all that, the aggregate of all that money, that number, and that creates the collateral. And so then you take that package, collateral package, to financier. And the financiers will look at it and say, I'll say, okay, the face of it is $1 million, meaning your collateral, I'll give you 800,000. Some people would say, I'll give you 500,000. Others will say, I really like it. I want you to make it a little bit bigger. I'll give you 1.2 million. So it depends on who you go to. But everything has to be collateralized by something if you're going to do it in the traditional finance. Like I said, if you have the rich uncle, then they'll just take their chance, or whatever, if you can do it, crowdfunding or something like that. But the more stable environment to build a career on is to be able to collateralize your projects and your packages so that you can take them out and get them financed. Then you can figure out, okay, if I have this element, that element, that element, this product is collateralized. And now I can just take it out to several funding sources and figure out who wants to do it.
And with these funding sources, where is a filmmaker looking for how to get in contact with these individuals? I mean, it sounds like a lot of these people, they work with existing, it's not like they just have a website where people can just contact them?
Well, my experience has been that your distributor knows who will, quote, bank their paper. So when they say, okay, your film's worth this much, they already have a financier that knows them. They've already paid back several times. And so they already kind of have an open deal. They say, okay, so if they come there with a Frazier film that's $1 million worth of sales or potential sales or whatever, I'll give 80% of that. They already know where to go with that. But there's also kind of a network of indie producers that we all kind of use the same people. A lot of money comes out of the UK. You can just look it up and find people, but you're always best, whoever's giving you collateral should know who's going to fund their collateral. That's how you know their collateral is valuable. If somebody says, if I go to you and say, hey, I'm going to give you a piece of paper and say your film's worth $1 million, people are going to say, who is this guy? What has he sold? What other collateral does he have? Is he cross-collateralizing this with other films? Blah, blah, blah. So a question for filmmakers to ask producers is to ask, if you go to somebody and somebody gives you a minimum guarantee and you sign your film to do it with them, they give you a minimum guarantee at whatever the amount is. First thing you ask them is, who do you know will bank your paper? Because if your paper has to be bankable, so you can get it from somebody that no one will bank the paper, and then you've tied up your movie for a year. So you ask them up front, who banks your paper? They'll say, well, you can go to Citibank, you can go to this funding guy, you can go to this private equity fund, and they fund that, and they funded our last 4 films. So we can go to, you send it out, and people send you a term sheet, and they bid for it. The funding companies bid to fund the film.
So first and foremost, you were a consumer of action films before you started making them? So you knew the audience, is that right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I like I said before, I kind of got turned into an action director because that's where we are, and that's what the people, distributors wanted. I tend to have more, my personal films I like tend to be more epic and deep. My favorite films are like Apocalypse Now, which has a lot of action, but it's also incredibly story driven. Godfather, movies like anything by David Fincher, they have great action in them, but they're more story driven. And I think that where I'd like to end up would be there. Action films are great, but in the big action films, there's a whole separate unit doing that. That's doing all that big stunts and stuff. And sometimes they do it completely independently. And the director, worries about the story and make sure the story ties into everything. So I'd like to do a film with no action, frankly. That would be my, because I've done so many with the action and then cartels and shooting everybody up. I'd like to do one that just had just a story, just a compelling, interesting story that, something like a Sling Blade, where it's just a good story and something that means something and maybe inspires and people can learn something from it and feel good about it and be part of their artistic experience. So, but then I don't want to down action movies. I mean, they've done a lot for me and I've built a career on it so far. And I like doing those too. It's a balance. And so I do, but in the films we do, we sneak that story in, we sneak it in so that it's there, so that that's what keeps that train moving in that trajectory towards more of exactly what I want. I don't want to just capitulate to doing action all the time. Want to create that story in there, in the framing, in the cinematography, and all that stuff, so that it's a little bit more than just the average action film, I hope.
Does a story have to have high stakes for you to be drawn to it?
I'd say so. Unless you're watching somebody that's so incredibly compelling or an idea that's so compelling. I'd have to think of an idea, but yeah, the stakes have to be high. You have to, because that creates the emotional investment. You have to invest in the character and then invest in the outcomes. And you have to care enough to sit there and want to, even if you kind of know what's going to happen, you just want to see how it's going to happen. That's the real investment. You know that, eventually the character is going to win and get away. You know that. You know the character's not going to die, but you want to see how that's done. So that's done through the heightening of the stakes. And we just want to see how we can become more emotionally involved with the character and the character arc. And then I tend to love twists. I love them. Because what it does is it makes you invest in one thing. And then at the end, it pivots. I don't want to use the word pivot a lot today, but in the end, it switches, and then you're like, I love it. It got me. It got me. And I'll just give just one example of something not like that exactly, but one of my favorite movies ever is $1 Million Baby. It's brilliant. The reason it's brilliant is because unless you know what it's about, I don't want to spoil, but unless you know what it's about, you think you're watching like a version of the female Rocky. And you're okay with it. You're going right along with it. She's prize fighting, blah, blah, blah. And then something happens and it turns into something completely different. And you realize that the stakes in the original part of that were nothing compared to the stakes in the end. So there's a brilliance to that, So So the answer is yes in that. I think you have to, the stakes have to be high. And you try to establish that early if you can in the movie, and then make it so that we go along the journey and get emotionally involved and invested with the character and with the storyline.
Where did you see the movie? Were you in the theater?
Yes, I did. It's amazing. But you know, some movies like that, it has a slow burn to it, and it's even a little bit noir, very dark, like Eastwood does. And but they're making a lot of decisions about a lot of things, but his final decision is something that he has to do, and it's heartbreaking. It's amazing.
Was it a busy theater where other people, could you feel the energy?
I don't remember exactly, but I bet you $10 it was nobody saying a word on those last. And you know, it's being narrated by Morgan Freeman with that beautiful voice of his, and you realize, it's just something. I sat there and watched all the credits go. It's fascinating to me. I love film.
How did you learn to write stories?
Well, I've always had a pretty good imagination, and I have a pretty clear vision of when I see something, I can pretty much put it onto paper, and I just write stories and short stories and things like that. They always interested me, and I always thought of kind of more high concept stuff, things like there was even a little bit more futuristic stuff sometimes. But I really didn't have a teacher or anything. I didn't learn. I just started to write things down, and the screenwriting teachers will not like me because I just write it. I don't think about structure. I really just channel it. So I feel like I've always felt like the stories are out there in the universe somewhere. We just type them. I'm just typing it out. So the story exists, and then the characters talk to me and they talk to themselves. So I'm just typing it. So I don't write as much anymore. I just don't have the patience for it, unfortunately. But I have a few stories in my head that I really, really want to write. But I have a really good writer, Benjamin Budd, who's really, really good, and he's better than me. So we have a great collaboration in that way.
But you wrote your first and second film?
About 3, I think.
3, okay.
Yeah.
The one about the banker, what
Yeah,
was?
about the Exodus of Charlie Wright. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so was this post Madoff or?
Well, it was post Madoff. In fact, it was based around him. When I saw that story, the Bernie Madoff story, the first thing I thought was, he's got all that money, he can run. Now, he gave himself up for the sake of his family, but he could run. And what if he ran someplace where nobody thought he would run? In other words, you're thinking, okay, Bermuda, Caymans, some paradise, he'll buy some island and then buy off the government, to protect him or whatever. But what if he was going through a spiritual journey and maybe looking for somebody, in this case, Exodus of Charlie Wright, where he's looking for somebody. And I mean, I don't want to ruin the film, but it's old now, it's 10 years old. He's sick. He's not going to make it. And so he wants to go find somebody, specifically his daughter that he's never met. And so he's in this Zen place where none of the money matters anymore. And he realizes how the more he chased the money, the more problems he had. And when he can finally do things for other people, he became a better person in his last days. And so I thought of that. And what's strange about it was just going to be like a Bernie Madoff story. And then at the end, I thought, what if he's sick? It completely informs the entire motivations about the story. And I just wrote very quickly the very, very last thing. Instead of him going to jail, they let him go because he's only got a couple months to live anyway. So what's the point? He'll never make trial. But some of the things that he was able to do and some of the people he was able to bring together was all worth it. So I guess to get to what I was saying, no one taught me to write it. I just see the stories. They're pretty clear to me, and I just type them out.
Right. So you remember hearing the actual Madoff story?
I do.
And
It fascinated me.
Yeah.
And the line story, La Línea, which is about an assassin that goes to, American assassin that goes into Mexico to get the head of the Tijuana cartel. And that came from when you cross over the border back then, there was a wanted poster. It said $5 million for the Arellano Felix brothers. I can say that now. Back then I couldn't say it because they're both dead. But because you really couldn't say the name back then. But the Arellano Felix brothers was the Arellano Felix cartel, which is the cartel that used to run Tijuana. They're gone, long since gone now. There is no cartel in Tijuana anymore. But so I remember seeing that, and I remember the day before, I saw the guy. He was in a yellow Hummer with about 4 cars around him. And he's just walking around, driving around. I'm thinking, $5 million? You can't tell me that some special forces guys are broke or something and don't want to come down here. I mean, that would, a real professional would try to get that, would come down to get him. So it's the same thing. And so it just kind of was born from that. I thought, wow, I mean, that's a very easy story to write for me. It's just some guy goes down there and wants that money,
Sure. And so it sounds like the stakes have to be really high in all this, again, going back to the storytelling. Mm-hmm. It can't just be, because in the Exodus of Charlie Wright, it wasn't just the FBI that was after him, it was a cartel. He'd wronged many people. It was
a cartel, and it was also the Russian mob. Because he was an investment banker, and he had taken money from an old Russian mob boss, $100 million, and invested it. And they weren't going to just wait for him to go to jail. They went and sent their guys after him. So he had the FBI going after him, he had the Russian mob, and then he had the local cartel people that were in financial trouble. And they were basically, they were getting killed off one by one because they didn't pay off a loan. So all of a sudden here comes Bernie Madoff guy. Where's the money? We know it, you're hiding it. And so but they all go off their separate ways. So
right. So many high stakes.
Yes, very
right.
high stakes.
And then his own health. So yeah.
Yeah, and then realized none of it mattered. That's the point.
How long did it take you to write that script?
Not long. I started it and wrote it maybe a month.
And so but that was your second film, right? So
Third.
Third. Okay, sorry. So you had a financier. You weren't coming out of pocket for it.
No, that was all set up. Just went right into it.
Okay.
And I got to direct it because I had the vision. So.
Where did you write it?
Where?
Yeah. Where were you?
In Baja, Rosarito Beach.
You have a special place?
Yeah, I live there most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, do you have a room? Or sometimes if it's something gritty, do you have to be in a gritty place where it's kind of chaotic?
What I do, I just have to listen to, when I used to write, I used to listen to classical music in the background. I don't listen to it any other time, but for some reason it helps me write. Maybe I should do it again so I can start writing again.
Well, there's been studies that, it stimulates a different part of the brain,
But I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
I just type it out and do it pretty quick.
Fascinating. And so no outline, no beat sheet, just the story. Do you use a screenwriting software?
Yeah, Final Draft.
Oh, great. Okay. So
just type it out.
Did anybody say, don't make this movie? Don't put the story out there. It's too soon.
No, because it was far enough away. It was far enough away, and Charlie Wright was played by Aidan Quinn brilliantly. Charlie Wright was a very interesting character, a very somber character. He'd obviously we don't know until the end that he's sick, but we were kind of wondering why he would the guy with all that money chose to go to this, slum apartment in hotel room, in the red light district of Tijuana. And his day consists of where it used to be of being chauffeured around. Now it consists of sitting on a bus and going watching kids play soccer and things like that. He's reimagining the world, and we're going along with him doing that. So it's a really interesting piece, you know? And very well performed.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Yes.
Why do you love asking an actor how the scene plays out?
Well, first thing I do when I get to the set, I or when I get ready to do a scene, I always ask the actors, how do you see it playing out? I do not come in heavy-handed with, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want to know how they see it play out. One of the reasons is that the actors are, from my experience, usually very much involved in their own character. So they really know it better than I know it. And if I tell them, here's where you're going to stand, here's where you sit, here's what you're going to do here, here's what you're going to do there, then it's going to look a certain way. I have this theory that we are using these new cameras now, 4K, 8K, 6K cameras, and they pick up everything. And a lot of times they're picking up blemishes, and some actors don't like that and stuff like this. But I have this theory that they also pick up when you don't believe it. They can tell. Therefore, it's always best to let the actors get there on set and figure out the way it plays out amongst them in the most organic way. And my job is to capture it, not to over-direct it. Because if you over-direct, I can see it and people can see it. Let it play out. And then while they're letting that play out, I'm telling my director, my DP, let's do a 35 here, let's move this scene here, left, right, blah, blah, blah. And then if we see something on some of the takes, once they've made it their own, then I can make an adjustment later if I really want to see something. Give me a little bit more. I'll tell them, let him calm you down. If you're crying, calm down a minute, and then, let it play out a little bit longer, and then see how that works. And if not, that's fine. But what you did is great. I also like to say a lot that I use a line that meaning after we do a little bit of coverage, I'll say, we're playing with house money now. Do what you want. Sometimes that's true and not true, but I still tell it to them. Sorry, actors, I'm doing that to you. But sometimes I always don't have it. But I always tell them, you're playing with house money. It makes them the most relaxed in that circumstance. So, and I always let them know that it's great. It's wonderful. I said, we got it. Fantastic, move on. And that confidence builds and builds and builds so that it's a lot of yeses. It's a lot of yes. It's a lot of good. It's a lot, I got it. I'm happy. Because that's really ultimate what actors want to believe, is that the director's happy with their performance. That's a big deal for them.
So when you do have that talk of how do you see the scene playing out, and it differs vastly from your idea, you let them try one way your way and one way theirs, or do you talk it out and say, that's interesting, why do you see your character? Because ultimately they would know their character some sense much better than you would, or you would think, because they're inhabiting it, they've thought about it.
Well, yes. I try not to say, no, that's not right. I would say, okay, well, I saw a little bit more this way or that way. Show me what you're talking about. And they'll either in the blocking or in a take, they'll show me. And then I'll say, okay, all right, cool. Just do that one more time. I'll do it on the reverse. But do one like this. Do one where you look a little bit more angry. Because what happens sometimes is it happens a lot with comedy. They'll be a little bit more funny I think it's maybe better to be a little bit more deadpan about it, or not have it be something that's trying to be too funny, because comedic timing, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I always let them do what they feel, though, unless there's, we're completely out of time. But I never would tell an actor, don't do it like this, do it like that. Never. Because there's just not much good that comes from that, You just have to let those kind of scenes play out and let the actors figure it out themselves. And usually, if you have faith in that, usually it turns out pretty good. Actors know what they're supposed to be doing. They're studying it more than I am. They're thinking about it in much further dimensions than I am.
So pivot to yes.
Pivot to yes.
I like that. It's good. How do you get the best performance out of an actor?
Well, it's really up to them to do it. It's going to be out the page or what's on the page. But at the end of the day, the best performance out of the actors, in my opinion, is to step back and let them perform, and you give them a lot of praise and a lot of reassurance. You just have to say, looks great, sounds great, even if there is little adjustments that you see. The more comfortable they are, the better performance you will get. I'm convinced of that. So it's about creating the comfort area. A lot of times I like to show them the shot, what they look like. I'll take a picture of it, say, look how good you look. It's amazing framing, right? Okay. And it gives them confidence and reassurance that everything's going to be fine. And let them do their thing. So I find that the best way to do that is like that. You don't, to a lot of adjustments, and don't say the, say the, and things like that. They get in their own head and get in. It's just better if you just let them just relax. Just do it. What you see, work within the space. This is what you do. This is your moment. It's on you. Camera's on you. So just relax, and I'm loving everything. I'm loving all the things that you're bringing to it. So just keep going, and we'll make sure that we get it.
So you're not necessarily showing them the dailies, or maybe you are, but you're showing them how the scene, how the establishing.
No, we don't show them dailies.
You don't show them dailies.
If I really like their shot, I'll show it to them. I'll play it back for them to show them, because it just creates a general confidence in the whole filmmaking team that this film you're going to look great. You're going to look fantastic in this film. And that confidence gives them, I feel, relaxes them and gives them a stronger sense of comfort throughout their performance. And I think that's where it comes from. I mean, some people, get really in there, and directors really get in there and say, I do it like this and do it like that, and really direct them. But I feel like just let them go and figure it out. And it's one of the things you learn about edit too. You learn that when you edit, when you learn editing, you learn that you control so much. And so you don't have to be so controlling on set. You can let the set play out, and you can be much more controlling in post, frame by frame. So let it play out so that there's more natural stuff, so you can get better performances. But they usually give you, if they trust you, they'll give you a lot, usually.
So the director, let the actor do their thing, editor, control it.
Yes, I'm going to say something relatively controversial. My feeling is always that, and actors don't like to hear this as much though, that a film with all of its glamour and sets and trailers and people with headphones on and clipboards and cameras rolling, that's really ultimately like shopping for food. You're in the grocery store. You're getting the spices, you're getting the meat, you're getting the vegetables. You cook the film in the edit. That means here's how much spice, here's how much salt, here's how long you cook the meat. Do you sear it? Do you cook it through? Do you put it in the water and make a broth out of it? Now, So that means that when you're filming, you're just gathering ingredients, okay? The editor and the edit team and the team that, is getting final cuts and doing the rough cuts and the final cut and everything else is what's actually creating the meal. And then the presentation of the meal is done through things like sound design, composing, color correction, so forth and so on. So that's where you cook up the film. So with that in mind, I can relax a little bit on set and not be so, it's gotta be perfect like it's gonna be in the edit. It's okay. Have that. If I don't love this angle, I'll go on the reverse and get it. Just be comfortable, be relaxed and get through it. And that's kind of my philosophy on that.
Why is the first take and the last take with an actor usually their best?
Well, the first take is in my opinion, going to be the most natural. It's what they are going to bring to it. And it's also, they know they're going to get another one. So they're relaxed. And a lot of times you'll get the very best take in the first take. It also informs thematically or energetically how the scene will go. Meaning it's like a guide. We all do a version, all your takes are a version of the first take. It didn't exist until you did the first take. So now it's a guide. This is where he's going to pause. This is where he's going to put the glasses up. This is where he's going to put the glasses down. This is where he's going to grab the cigarette. This is where he's going to walk out the door. The last take is my take. That's the one I can say I'm moving on because I got it. So whatever issues are from the first take to the second to last take will be made perfect in the final take. So, and that's the one that we've been through it a few times, we've lived through it, we've worked it out, and then it's the final one is the one that we'll usually print and usually use, and then of course, if you're doing not cross coverage, you're doing traditional coverage, you could turn around and then they can relax and give the other person the chance to do the same thing. So it's like, so that's first and last take are the most important. The rest in the middle, you can grab pieces of those in the edit sometimes if you need it. There's any kind of focus problems or something like that. But as a general rule, I like to use those two takes in the final edit.
Do you do a lot of martial arts or have like an Eastern philosophy sort of teachings?
Me personally?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I do martial arts movies, but
oh, I see. Okay.
No. I just, what I do though is I just have a kind of general faith in the universe and try not to over control things and to exude a calmness throughout all the areas of my life. And it usually, works very well on a set where people are chaos and a lot of chaos. I tell directors, say, hey man, if you lose it, everybody's going to lose it. Meaning a new director, whatever. So you've got to keep your calm. Got to keep it together, no matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets. Just keep it together. We're all going to make it. It's the universe provides. So yeah, I don't have any, but no, Zen stuff or anything like that. Just regular stuff.
Why is it so difficult to make a great movie?
There's just so many moving parts to make a great movie. I mean, and you look at films like Apocalypse Now, Godfather, the real great movies, Forrest Gump, and there's so many moving parts, and so many people have to believe in the project, from the financiers to the actors to the distributors to the people that are making the adjustments on the script and things of that sort. There is a, you know, you really have to get lucky, frankly, let's be real, on having all those things to come together, because it's not just the money. It's not just the money. It's not just the big actor. It's got to be the whole thing. I look at films like that, like Forrest Gump, and that's just a truly brilliant piece. You know, expansive and meaningful, and makes you cry, it makes you laugh, and it means something. And then you look at films like Godfather series, Apocalypse Now, all those truly great films, Taxi Driver, and I think that it's just, you got to get lucky in so many ways, and it's just timing, and you just do your best. You're trying to make a great film every time. You're trying to, no matter how small. You're trying to do, that's the beauty of it, right? Everybody's trying to make a great film, the greatest film. Everyone doesn't come out to be the greatest film, but we're all trying, and some of them get there and some of them don't. So, you know, when you hit that lucky stride of creativity and the right amount of resources and money and the right amount of talent behind everything, and then just the right synergy and energy, then it turns into, you know, something magic. But at the end of the day, it has to start with the story, and you have to have the story in a way that you know, people can get behind it and give it the chance to be that greatness. So it's just got a lot of different ways to skin that cat, but very few cats get skinned in that way. So that's why they're so special when we see them. That's why we watch them 1,000 times. That's why we, you know, they get all the love and adoration that they do.
Well, if we watch, is it Hearts of Darkness or Heart of Darkness?
Yes.
So we see that Coppola luck was not really on his side for much of the film, even though it turned out incredible. So he had many things.
Well, I mean, Harvey Keitel was the actor, and they fired him. Martin Sheen had a heart attack. They ran out of money several times. Marlon Brando wasn't being cooperative. I mean, it was a huge mess.
There were government issues. They had to,
right, and they have a whole. If you see the Redux, there's a whole section of the film wasn't even there, but there was a thread in that film that is the same thread as on the river that pulled the boat up the river to the end, and that never. And there's a line there that says, "Never get off the boat." And it's very interesting because that ultimately is about the story. Never get off the boat. There's too much stuff going on the boat, regardless of all the chaos. And they did a great job of showing when they got off the boat, how much chaos there was. Stay on the boat, stay on the river. And then that leads you to the end chaos, but there's at least some kind of closure here. So my feeling is that, you know, Heart of Darkness, I saw it, I was like, a lot of people would have given up. A lot of people. And he didn't. He stayed on the boat and got to the end. And for that, it's brilliant. And he also cooked it up in the edit.
let's say you were going to write a warrior filmmaker's manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
What would be some of the core tenets? I don't know, I think I have some written here, but just, sort of like don't use a tool that you don't know much about, or don't become overly attached to one particular method.
Yeah, okay. Well, me personally, and it's been a theme throughout the thing, is that don't control everything. Let people do their work. Don't try to be. You have to trust the process, and trust that everything is going to turn out okay. And that trust is contagious throughout the set. And when you have that, your set has harmony. Second, independent filmmakers, you have to cut out cancers and poisons quickly. You can't let them fester inside of production. If you have people that are being toxic, if you have people that are disruptive, you must get them out of there as soon as possible, because we don't have the time or money to have, we're in one war here. We can't have many wars within the war. Get rid of it as soon as possible, and get rid of it so everybody understands that this will not be tolerated. It's very important in indie film, because films can become a big mess. And, you know, one of the things that's so interesting that I've seen is that a lot of films, and I don't know if I should mention that one film we talked about, but I just looked at that like, that's like on every set. It doesn't matter, $50,000 movie, they have $6-7 million, and they still have the same problems as the $60,000 movie. So it's not about the money, it's about the management of the project and the team. And when you have a lot of really bad elements or potentially bad elements in that thing, in your film, you have to get them out quick. Don't let them fester. Get it out of there. If you're gonna be a producer, you gotta know that, and you have to be able to know where that's coming from.
Okay, so that would be the manifesto.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think about a manifesto.
The Warrior's Manifesto, yeah.
I have to think about, like, you know, some of those things that would be, but probably, yeah. Just keep your set harmony is everything, and that's how you get what you want. You have to concentrate on set harmony. If you don't have set harmony, you're not going to get what you want, and you're probably going to go over budget, and you're probably going to not have the artistic outcomes that you're looking for. So keep your set calm and working well, and let people do the work that they're doing without being too heavy-handed, and trust the process.
Just to play the devil's advocate for a moment, so I think if you are working with the same crew, then you know this person's strong in this area, and vice over here, this person's great at this. But if it's a new set coming together, there would be some problems.
Yes.
So how can someone stop a train wreck from happening when sometimes so many moving parts and egos? I don't know if it's possible. People are going to have their own agendas. You know?
It's not possible. And it's one of the reasons that you should strive as a filmmaker to find your crew. Get a crew. Find, even if they're coming from everywhere, but find that one sound guy, find the one art department people. Your film journey should be, you know, a good portion of it, not just creation of a product, but building a team so that the creation of the product becomes more efficient. So you can't, you have to just do the trial and error. You're going to find people, and you just try to, you know, get as good people as possible with good, and, you know, really do vetting if you can. But at the end of the day, you're going to run into that, and so you just have to live and learn to keep things moving, and get a really good line producer that's strong and then willing to get rid of toxic elements, poison elements quickly, so that they don't fester, so you can keep moving forward. But at the end of the day, you want to that's the whole point, you know. You want to have your own crew. You want to be able to have a team of people, you know, that you know you have a shorthand with, and that you don't have to worry about. You don't have to explain everything to them from scratch. If something happens, they give you the benefit of the doubt instead of thinking that somehow you're coming from a bad place. So when you build that, that's what that 10 years is for, or whatever, is to build up a team of people that you can trust and depend on.
We're hoping that we can help some people that might be watching this who are stuck in getting a project made, find a roadmap to maybe get unstuck. I realize in current times things are kind of in limbo, but any suggestion?
Well, I'd say one of the things you want to do is keep working. I said it before earlier, meaning keep the train moving down the tracks. And if you're just getting started and you feel stuck, you may have to do some kind of compromises. I've had to do a lot. You may not make the film exactly that you want. The guy may say, you may have walking around with a budget of $500,000 for 2 years, and a guy comes and tells you, I can give you 200,000. Just do it. You have to keep making things and take the good parts of what you make and move that forward, make it better, take the lessons, take the experience, take the connections, take the pieces and put it in your reel. But don't allow your idea of how you saw things playing out stop you from making something that is possible to make. Just film it. Now, I'm not one of those proponents of the people that say, well, just go out and film anything with your iPhone or anything. I think it creates a little bit of a glut in the system, and it makes it harder for the buyers and so forth to really distinguish, go through, before they're going through 20 films, now they're going through 2,000. But if you feel that something's not working and you have to reimagine it, lower budget, action scene, different ending, go to a distributor and figure out what they want. I'm looking for a shark movie, okay? Go that direction and figure out where I like the script, but the beginning and the ending doesn't work for me. You have to submit to the laws of supply and demand until such time as you can have more control over that. So just keep doing stuff. Keep saying yes, even if it's going to be hard, even if it's risky. Say yes. So I'll do it. If you got this much, I'll do it. Because you don't want to, I'd rather be struggling trying to make a $200,000 movie work than sitting at the coffee shop with the $500,000 budget, trying to figure out who wants to, who wants to do it. If somebody says yes to that, do it. So don't get out of your own ideas and just let the supply and demand inform the laws of supply and demand inform what you do, and take the risk. You have to take the risk. This is not there will be loss in this business. You're going to lose. You're not going to hit home runs every time. It's not going to happen. And you know what? You're going to strike out sometimes, but you got to keep swinging at it. And yeah, that would be my advice. And make sure that you listen. Don't get caught up in how you see it. Listen. Even if they tell you, I don't like this ending. You need 2 more action scenes in it. You need to put this actor in it and not your friend from acting class. You have to listen to that stuff. Just keep going. Do whatever it takes. And any opportunity that comes your way, grab it and take the risk. You have to. There's no other way.
Is that something that you did in the beginning? You waited, thinking that you could only make a certain film at this budget, and then the rich uncle, friend of the friend, whatever, presented itself, and you said, okay.
Yeah. At first I was like, well, the budget needs to be this. And, at first you do budgets and then you go find the money for the budget. Now they tell you how much they have and you reverse engineer that. That's just the way it works. And then you just, and you and it usually it's to the penny, you know. It's never enough. So you can get caught up in, okay, well, I did a budget and the budget's, you know, $3 million. Well, that movie's not worth $3 million. And if somebody tells you that, you have to listen to them. They say that movie's worth $850,000. I'll give you, you know, whatever you need, paperwork or whatever, to get that, if you can do it. Other than that, let me know. Do it. Just figure it out. Go somewhere to do it. Figure out a way to get it done. But the last thing you want to do is, I can't remember who told me, but it's if you're not making movies, you're not in the movie business. You got to be making movies. So just keep going. Just make the movies. Do what it takes, and take the risks.
How did you get the names attached for your first film?
That's the line, and they really liked the script. Andy Garcia liked it. Our casting director showed it to him. It's really a really interesting role. It has a nice twist to it. We probably offered a little bit more than we should, but you're going to have to do that at first. Until a director knows you. Director is like a party. It's like people. If you're a popular director, everybody wants to come to your party. So you're Clint Eastwood or David Fincher. You don't have to beg an actor. They'll say, I'll have this guy, this guy, this guy. If you're unknown, you know, they're going to be like, well, who is this guy? Well, okay, well, how much are they paying? You know, how good is the story? You know, so where you want to get to director-wise is to where people know you a little bit and say, oh, okay, Frazier's doing a film. Okay. I mean, I have a version of that in the smaller actors, but you want to get the actors that have bigger clout that can get you the bigger budgets, and then you bring your other actors that you've developed on the smaller films along with you.
So money talks.
Yeah, money. If it's money in the script, the key to any green light is the actor in 2022. So the actor signs on. If Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise sign on to your movie, people will throw money at you. It's what's the hard thing to get, and they know it. So you want them to, get to know you, and it becomes easier once you work with them a couple times, or once you work with them once and they trust you. It just becomes a phone call.
Do you go to the distributor first or the investor first?
To the distributor first.
Okay.
Yes.
And they know they know the investors
right. Because the investor wants to see if it's traditional finance and not, like I said, the rich uncle. If it's a traditional investor, you have to present your collateral. The collateral is given to you by the distributor. So who you really go to first is the actor. You attach the actor first. Or you can go to this distributor and say, I'm going to place an offer to this actor. Will you back it? They say, okay, just whatever. That movie will be worth this much. Okay, that will inform how much you could pay the actor and still make your film. Then once they say yes, then you can take that paperwork, or they take the paperwork to their financier and begin to cash flow the film. So it sounds easy, but it's got a lot of it's kind of chicken and egg in certain areas, But the thing is, if you know the actors, and they know you, and you have a good reel, then it becomes a lot easier. That's why you have to keep working and keep your network strong and keep your reel strong, so that you can keep working, and people get to know you, and then you build a reputation of being good to work with, that you do good work, that that people have a good time with you, things like that, and that you do what you say you're going to do, things like that. So the answer is absolutely go to the distributor first, and or the sales agent, and then go to the actor, and then go to the finance.
But for a first-time filmmaker, is that something that's done a lot? Is they'll approach a distributor when they have really no track record?
Well, a lot of times they're going to say send the script, and it'll get lost in the pile. So you're really best to go then with a package, if you can. Meaning with an actor. Say, I have this actor, and here's a script. have this actor. Can we do it? So, and then so, the question is, how do you get the actor without having a firm offer? It's like I said, chicken and egg happening here all the time. So that's why, you just have to figure out how to be a good bet, be safe for your distributor and your investor. Be a safe bet. That means you're just going to have to keep going down and down and down on the cost so that till it makes sense for them, there's a trigger number. And same with the actor. The actor has a trigger number to say yes. Then the distributor has a trigger number to say yes. And then and then your budget has to be that way. So in other words, it's not going to be fun the first couple of films, but it'll be fun, but it's going to be rough. You have to put in your time, and then the next time it's a little bit easier. You can call that same actor again. Hey, I got another thing going on. What's up? Can we do it? Sure. See, then you don't have to jump to the same hoop. But that would have never happened if you hadn't done that other movie. The sacrifices will need to be made, and I think it's important.
If someone were to shadow you day in, day out, what would they learn about the movie business, the way you do it, where you are?
I think that they would learn from me specifically that they would learn that directing, specifically as a director, directing is a collaborative process. I think that sometimes in the way that it's shown is like, especially in media tropes about directors, they're controlling everything. Really, they would find that I would just let things kind of play out and not try to over control things too much. That was something that I didn't know. I thought, okay, I'm going to go get to set and everybody's going to be looking at me for how exactly to make things happen. Actually, because of some of the confidence I've built in things like being able to edit and just over a course of a lot of films, that the life and the set will run a lot more smoothly if people are trusted to do their job and it's not too heavy-handed. Now, I think they'd also learn that you should be careful about how you organize your time on set. In other words, when the lunchtime comes, I go away. I don't sit and chat with the actors and stuff like that. You need to keep yourself as calm or as focused as possible, and you need a minute to as much as you can to just keep yourself in that zone, because it's not that easy. It's a lot of things going on. And so I would try to show someone that tone and the harmony of the set is incredibly important for your outcomes and results. It plays a huge part. So I would create, or I would show that somebody that's shadowing me, that I create that kind of environment on the set. And I think that they would also learn that, it's just kind of a lot of ups and downs, but it's, you just got to stay positive about everything, and try not to lose perspective. We're doing something that's super fun, and we're doing something that's enjoyable. And even though it's a lot of crazy stuff going on, it's still something that we all really want to do. And it's not anything that's it's a lot of times not life or death. It seems like it just feels like it because it hits that same place in your soul. Like it's this fight or flight moments and this and that. And I had a guy that was on a movie I was producing, and he got fired as the producer, and it was as the director, and it was a big kind of conspiracy against him, and it was this big thing. And I took him to the airport and I said, man, this is terrible. What's happened to you? And he said to me, he goes, like 3 years ago, my wife, had this thing in her throat or something, and they found something, and within 6 months, she was dead. And he goes, that's something. He goes, this is nothing. This is just a movie. And he got on the plane and he went away. And I never forgot that, because it's true. Keep it in perspective. Don't lose perspective. We're having fun. We're making a movie. We're being creative. We're doing what we love to do. Let it play out, and don't try to hold on to it so much. Just let it go and let things play out the way they're meant to play out.
Yeah, that's what I had asked you. I mean, that's a beautiful story, by the way, about when you can tell when someone's been knocked down,
Mm-hmm.
and you can sometimes tell and how they react to certain things,
Mm-hmm.
and that right there, that's a
Yeah. I couldn't believe how calm he was. It was just,
yeah.
this is nothing.
And you're driving him to the airport. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just turned and walked away. So yeah.
So if someone was to also shadow you as a producer, what would they learn? And how would the producer and the director duties differ?
Well, from I'm assuming you're talking about on-set producer, and not a creative producer where you're putting the package together. But on-set producer, they'd learn that it's you have to learn to take a little bit of abuse and deal with it, and you can't take it personally. The idea of most sets is that most problems are the producer's problems. Production didn't do this. Production didn't provide that. Production didn't send this here at the right time. It's always production's fault. You have to really grow a thick skin. You have to. You grow a thick skin and focus on making your days and getting the film done. Don't get into the emotion of it. Don't get sucked into that. You just stay on point, stay on focus, and let people know that you're watching everything, and that you're ultimately there to take care of them, and learn to apologize when you've done something wrong, and make the move to correct it as quickly as possible. Don't get in arguments. Arguments as a producer are a waste of time. You're the boss ultimately, so just don't even go there. Just stay on target, stay on message, and stay on point, and think about making your days and making sure that, like, your director is like a drawbridge. Just make sure it's always a step in front of them. Don't ever let that camera stop. Nothing stops the camera. Have to keep the camera moving. So I guess that's what I think as a producer. I prefer to direct, but I'm getting ready to produce a movie now, and it's going to be interesting.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
It is a Christmas movie. I mean, my writer told me the other day, he says it's about a guy that has no shoes. If you ask me right now, is it in a Christmas movie? Well, yeah, he's got that's the one where he has a little doll, right? The teddy bear?
I don't remember that part. I do remember it's the Christmas party's happening.
Yes, it is a Christmas movie.
Okay.
How can I be an action director or not? I can't remember Die Hard. It's been too
That's
long.
okay. It's been a while for me.
It's been a while. I can't remember. So, well, yeah. I mean, not to be not as fun as it is supposed to be, but I think it's more about vulnerability. He's hurt, injured, no shoes, badly hurt foot, and he's got to limp around and figure all this stuff out. And but the answer is yes. I'm going to say yes just because I think it certainly sounds cooler to say yes.